Hey everybody. Okay, so the NHL and the NHLPA have agreed tentatively on the CBA, the new CBA extension, plus all the Phase 3 and Phase 4 protocols. The document's not released, obviously, until it's been ratified by the players and the Board of Governors, I believe, for the NHL. And once that's done, it'll be released, and we can get moving forward on Phase 3 and possibly Phase 4, because still things can happen where they don't get beyond Phase 3. So we're going to take a look at what they agreed on. So there's the CBA MOU. The MOU stands for Memorandum of Understanding. I imagine that'll come off when the players ratify it, I think. So that's the CBA MOU extension. Phase 3 and 4 protocols. And then Frank Saravelli did a little bit on what it would be like inside the Phase 4 bubble. So we're going to take a look at that. So these things are being reported by really good sources. You're talking about Bob McKenzie, Elliot Friedman, a couple of others. So it's good sources. It's being reported everywhere now. And I'll give you the details that I know, and we'll go through that. So the CBA, the new extension, it's going to include a bunch of things, probably more than this, obviously, but this is the highlights of it. There's going to be no changes to signing bonuses. Signing bonuses have been a way for some teams to get around the cap hits, and yeah, so there's going to be no changes to that. I think there were some people or some GMs, they wanted some changes, but there are none. Maybe it's not the GMs or the league that doesn't like it. Somebody didn't like it, but they didn't change it. There will be 2022 and 2026 Olympics, if they can work it out with the IOC and the IIHF. So they're going to be allowed to go to the Olympics. And then since the new CBA is going to be extended to the 2026, I guess beyond that, they'll work that out in any new CBAs after that. But it looks like they'll be going to the next two Olympics. This one, if it can get done, we would figure by 2026, it's going to be okay to be having the Olympics. No trade clauses stay with the traded players. So before this, I guess, and I didn't know this, but when a player was traded to a new team, his no trade clause that he had to be renegotiated with the team, so it didn't follow him automatically. Well, as of this CBA, when a player is traded, so is his no trade clause. Even if the no trade clause hasn't kicked in yet, and it kicks in a little later in his contract, it follows him. So that's a bit of a change. Playing in Europe, so if you're a player that's playing in Europe and you want to come back to the NHL, you will no longer have to pass through waivers. So before you had to go through waivers, and there's a bunch of, I don't know how many, but there's a couple of, I think it's Glenn Anderson, somebody was telling, maybe it's a hockey guy was telling the story, that he had been playing in Europe. He signed with, I think the Maple Leafs or the Whalers, one of the two teams, and when he came back, he had to clear waivers, and he was plucked off the waiver list by, once again, either, I think, the Leafs or the Whalers, and so he came to, or was the Oilers, something like that, and he ended up with the Leafs. Anyway, I don't know the whole story off by heart. I was listening to it in a video. But yeah, things like that could happen where you sign a player, he comes over, and you lose him to waivers. It's not a really good situation. That won't happen anymore. The escrow, there's going to be a cap on the escrow for next season at 20%. The season after that, it lowers and lowers until the last 3 seasons of this agreement, it'll be at 6%. And another thing on escrow, if there is an escrow debt of $125 million owed to the league by the players, $125 million or more, it'll extend actually the the length of the CBA. It'll go till 2027 and allow the players a little extra time to pay that off. Now, if you're going to ask me, why would the players owe $125 million? I don't know. I don't really understand the escrow 100%, so I can't really answer that accurately. But I know that they're responsible for a certain amount of money, especially from this year when they've been paid and the league's revenues were not what they were projected to be. And since the players' salaries are tied to the league's revenues at 50-50, there's a possibility they could owe money. I think that's how it works, but I'm not 100% sure. If anybody does know that and you want to put it in the comment section, please feel free to do that, and I'd appreciate that. Conditional picks. Conditional picks will no longer be tied to the player re-signing with the team he was traded to. So you take a look at, I think this happened with Montreal. They traded Marco Scandella to the St. Louis Blues for 2 picks. The second pick was conditional to whether Scandella would sign with them, which he did. But that'll no longer be the way it can happen. So you can't have conditional picks being tied to re-signings. Salary cap. This is the big one for this. Salary cap is going to remain flat at $81.5 million. Now, if you remember, I said, if you watch my videos, I said it a couple of days ago that it was going to be $81.5 million for 2 years, go up $1 million, and then another $1 million the next year. It doesn't seem to be like that unless the league revenues reach $4.8 billion. Once they reach $4.8 billion, the salary cap will be allowed to come up. And then at that point, a new formula to determine what the cap will be used. So once they reach $4.8 billion, and I don't know how far off they are, and I don't know how long that'll take, and I imagine they don't either. But once that happens, there is a new formula in place to determine how the cap will go up. And listen, there'll be a new TV deal in the States and all that kind of stuff. So there will be a raise. I imagine it'll be probably considerable when they're starting to raise it, like I'm guessing now, but you'd think it'd be a $4, $5, $6 million raise, maybe higher than that when they're allowed to raise it. But I would think it's going to be 4 or 5 years before they're allowed to. So we may be looking at an $81.5 million salary cap for a few years in a row. And if anybody out there is one of the people that wanted the Habs to spend to the salary cap, I think you can see why them not doing that, even though they didn't know this would happen, is going to be a benefit to them, that they're not at the cap. Next up, we will look at the Phase 3 and 4 protocols that they have come up with. And the number one here, I just put Domi won't play, and here is why. Let me get that. I should have it already. Okay, so there's a clause in these new protocols for the return to play. And this one, I think, and so does a lot of people, think that this rules out players like Max Domi being able to play even if he wants to play. So players who, after consultation with club doctor and the club's infectious disease expert, are determined to be at substantial risk of developing a serious illness as a result of exposure to the virus, shall be deemed unfit to play and shall not be permitted to participate in either Phase 3 or Phase 4. And then I wrote here, Domi won't be allowed to play. So I've been saying this because I see in a lot of people's predictions on the lineups and all that kind of stuff that they have Domi here, there, wherever in the lineup. And it's just, to me, it's ridiculous to think that he's, to put him there because he won't play. I've been saying 2 or 3 weeks now that he's not going to play. It just makes sense, and I think that clause rules out players like Domi, Capo Caco. There's another guy, I can't remember the name, but these guys are not going to be able to play because of their diabetes. We know for them it's diabetes. For other players, it's different things, and I'm sure they won't reveal why. And it's not our business why. It's not our business what his condition is, and it's his personal health, and it's his personal business about that. But they're going to be ruled unfit to play, and they won't play. And watch, that is what's going to happen. Okay, the teams will be allowed 30 skaters and unlimited goalies. So any team, say if a team has 10 goalies in their system, they're allowed 10 goalies. So 30 skaters, unlimited goalies. Now, I don't know if that means the expanded roster of 7 extra players. Is that the taxi squad? I tend to believe, because they mentioned nothing about taxi squads or black aces. I think everybody that you're going to carry with you has to be in those 30 skaters. Only players eligible for return to play will be at Phase 3. So if Phase 3 does happen, they've made the agreement. Players just have to ratify, which we'll get to. If, where was I now? Yeah, so if once they get to camps opening up, if you don't see a player playing there in the camp or notice that he's on the roster, he's not playing. It's just the way it is. He's not going to be playing. He'll been ruled uneligible, whatever it is. I'm sorry, the word's not common. Or he'll have opted out. They're allowed to opt out. And that's the next thing. Opting out, the players have to, in writing, opt out by July 7th, which is, I'm filming this on the 6th, so tomorrow at 5 p.m. Phase 3 rosters by the teams have to be handed in by July 9th. I think it's at 5 p.m. That's Eastern Standard. I'm here in Eastern Standard Time, so we're depending on where you are. But yeah, so but I'm not sure if there's a time limit on that. But July 9th, the rosters for Phase 3 have to be handed in. Now, other things, no mask required by coaches behind the benches. They're not going to have to wear masks when they're behind the benches. That's up to them. Every other aspect of it, if there's people in the room with them, they have to be wearing masks, players and coaches. The only time players are not required will be when players are exercising, so in the gym, working out, doing whatever form of exercise, or on the ice. So when they're on the ice, they're not going to be required. I personally think they should be wearing masks even when exercising and on the ice. You may say that could hamper their breathing, but that's really not true. It's not true. Their oxygen that gets through is enough. It's not much. There's hardly any change. Such a small fluctuation. When people have masks on, they put that thing on their finger. It tells them what their oxygenization is in their bloodstream, and I've seen many of them on YouTube that there's hardly any difference. Doctors go 20 hours sometimes doing an operation wearing a mask the whole time. They're fine, and I think players can do it, but it's not a requirement. I personally think it'll keep them safer. Still not a requirement. Might look weird, but good time for the teams to come up with cool logos and cool masks, and the players would be wearing them. We'd see it. I think it would be good, and I think they can do it. Bonus money. They've decided on. I think they said doubling. So 32 million is doubling the bonus money players could receive in the playoffs. It'll be broken down. 20,000 will go to each of the qualifying round losers, which means that's for all the players, and they can vote on how that gets broken up. So even some of the staff, whatever, they decide you get a share, that's it. So now 20,000, there's more than 20 players. They're not making much money at it. And it works all the way up to 240,000 for the Cup winners. So whoever wins the Stanley Cup will receive 240,000 for them to decide how it's broken up as well. So really, they're not doing it for big money. Anybody saying it's for the money, they're not. Players made their money during the season. They hardly make any money in the off season. Now, for us, it may seem like, oh, that's pretty good money, but for them, it's not. It's not money. Players will be tested 48 hours prior to start of Phase 3. That gives them the time for the tests to come back, because usually they're 12 hours. Apparently sometimes it's not, and it comes into play later. I don't know if I wrote it here, but I'll try to remember to tell you that players that are, for some reason, if they're tested and the tests come back late, they will not be allowed to go and participate on the ice or whatever. They're, like if they're tested while they're in Phase 3, they won't be able to come from their home onto the ice. They'll have to stay away until there's a positive test. If the test is delayed, they'll have to wait till the test arrives positive. So that's how they're working that. They're going to be very tight on that, apparently. So they'll be tested 48 hours prior to Phase 3. Positive test equals unfit to play. Names will not be released to the media. So I don't know what the thinking is on that, because, names not being released to the media, fine. But if a player's out all of a sudden, we didn't see him get hurt anyway, we're going to kind of know that, he's got COVID, but they're not going to release it to the media. Yeah, that was a cough break, if you noticed a cut. It wasn't a cut. Okay. All players will have a PPME, which is I forgot. I should have known this. I got it written here, though. A pre-participation medical examination. So not only will they be tested for COVID, they will have a medical examination as well before they're entered into Phase 3. NHLPA needs 72 hours to ratify these agreements. Dates shouldn't change. So that date of July 13th for training camps to open, July 26th for them to arrive at hub cities, and August 1st for games to start happening. Those shouldn't change as long as they are able to ratify on time, which they should be. I'm not sure if it's going to be Wednesday or they actually, I'll tell you what, when this stuff was announced, I think the CBA part hadn't been fully agreed on. But since then, I do believe it's fully been agreed on. So I'm not sure now if it's Wednesday they're going to start the ratification process, or it's possible it's today or tomorrow. So figure by Friday it should be ratified. because honestly, I think it's the Sunday that we're supposed to be in camps, so they need to have it done by Friday. Teams required to bring at least, this is interesting, at least one content creator / social media employee for phase 4. So when they say that, I'm interpreting it content creator. Now, I know I'm not going to get picked, but someone like me here on YouTube, maybe a writer for one of their online, like Habs Eyes on a Prize, The Athletic, somebody who makes content. So they're going to bring either that, or they have social media employees, so they have to bring at least one. So that's at least one. Maybe they'll have more than one, and that's for phase 4, because I think the NHL, they're smart. They know without fans in the stands, they're going to be needing some other way to get everybody involved, and on social media by having people who can make content while they're in there. It's going to help, so it's good for PR. That's what I think. Now, what I said, I'm not going to be picked. Would I like to be picked? Yeah, I don't think I'm good enough anyway. But yeah, it's possible some teams are going to pick guys like me to do this content. They have to be with them in the bubble, stay in the bubble, and cover the teams. So that's pretty interesting. Now, like I said, I'm not getting picked, but you never know. One of us that are covering the Habs, they might pick, but it'd probably be more like a writer who is working for one of the online, I want to say papers, but it's not. But you know what I mean. Okay, so if you leave the bubble, this is the big one, and I forgot to eat. I don't like that. I'm a bit OCD about that. If you leave the bubble without permission, you could be removed. So not allowed back in, you're gone. And your team could, they could be disciplined in some way, either with a hefty fine, or you could lose draft picks. Now, it wasn't specified what draft picks you might lose, so I think the threat of the possibility of your team losing a first round draft pick is probably a pretty good deterrent for someone saying, let me just get out of here. They're professionals anyway, and I don't think it'll happen anyway. But it's a heavy, look, if you step out because you want to go for a beer, you do that and get caught, and your team loses the draft pick that gets the, well, no, it wouldn't be one of those, but loses the draft pick. Your team's not going to be happy with you. That's pretty bad anyway. And there's other, punishment of different forms. Could be monetary. Okay, so now Frank Saravalli is the one I get this from. He's reporting what it might be like, or what it should be like inside the phase 4 bubble, some of the things they're going to be doing. Each team will have one floor of the hotel that they're staying at. So each team, I'm sure there's enough rooms for that, or 1 or 2 if required. I don't know exactly how big the hotels are. Imagine there'll be big hotels. So they'll have one floor. Each player will have separate rooms. I wrote no entertaining, but that means no one's allowed to go into anybody else's room. So point final. You have your room, you stay home. Basically, like we've all been doing, staying home away from people. That's what's going on. Housekeeping. Phone call, hang on. All right, so so they won't be able to go into each other's rooms. They're quarantining just like we are at home, not going to friends' houses and stuff. That's basically it. I don't know why this was important, but it seemed to be. Housekeeping every 3rd day. They won't have the housekeepers and people in their rooms. I guess that's what it is. And the rooms will be cleaned regularly. I imagine sterilized and all that good stuff. Players can use, probably get done. Like hotels are bad enough. I've heard stories, but they'll probably actually get the sheets changed and all that stuff. Players can use hotel bars, restaurants, pools, and gymnasiums. So they're allowed to work out, they're allowed to go swimming, they're whatever, because the hotels will be strictly for the NHL, so it will be part of the bubble. There won't be other people inside. The worry is, and I don't know how they're working with that, the employees that work there and all that stuff, I don't know how that's going to affect. Are they going to stay at the hotels as well through this whole thing? Are they allowed in and out? I don't know how that's going to work. They're talking about possibly having excursions inside and outside the bubble, so I don't know exactly what that means about inside, but outside they're talking tee times for golf excursions. The players can go play golf. You can reserve the whole course for a day and have everybody go, and you can keep it inside the bubble. Golf is not don't have to be on top of each other, that's for sure. Players authorized, I forgot the D. Anyway, players authorized to leave for medical or personal reasons will go through a quarantine and testing period when they come back. So if there's a birth, if there's a death in the family, if there's a medical reason to come back, you're going to go through some form of quarantining and testing until you test negative for a certain amount of days. Last, immediate family will be allowed for conference finals and Stanley Cup finals after testing and quarantining. So for the conference finals and the Stanley Cup finals, they're going to allow the immediate families to come in and stay with the players, and they will have to go through a quarantining before they're allowed to do that, and testing like the players every second day or every day, however it is. So they'll have to do that as well, but they'll be allowed right at the end of the playoffs. And there you go. Yeah, it's been a long video. That's everything that I am able to gather and my opinions on it. And the document, once it's ratified, will be released. So maybe I'll do another video to see what's on there and anything that I didn't cover here. So thanks for watching. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. While you're down there, leave any comments you may have about anything here, what you think about it. If you think it's smart, stupid, anything you might think in the comment section. And if you haven't already, please subscribe and ring that notifications bell, and that's going to get you your daily fix of Bleu Blanc Rouge right here at Talkin' Habs. So thank you everybody for watching. Please stay safe out there. Wear a mask when you're around people. Please do that. I want you back here watching Talkin' Habs videos. And yeah, that's it. Stay safe. Thanks for watching. Peace out, y'all. See you next video.